Welcome, you're listening to Upstart Live. I'm Ahmed Yusuf.
And I'm Lisa Berg. Every Friday we broadcast live from La Trobe University in Bandura, tackling current affairs, news, politics, sports.
And this week, Naim Kirk gives us part 2 of his series on what's happening in the Republican debate.
And Alana Mazurk tackles gambling addiction apps.
But first, we have the news headlines with Marlena Dahlman.
Hi, Marilena.
Hi, thanks guys.
Thanks for coming on.
A powerful magnitude 7.8 earthquake struck Ecuador's Pacific coast on Sunday morning. 570 people are known to have died, according to a government statement, with more than 1,700 still listed as missing. The affected area is a very touristic zone. Search efforts are ongoing with the help of sniffer dogs and digging machinery through the debris of flooded homes, hotels and stores. Survivors have been found, including 6 who were pulled from the rubble of a hotel, but it's erased against the clock. Witnesses have claimed the smell of the deceased is filling the air in the worst-hit areas. Desperate family members have joined the rescue efforts to find the missing loved ones. So far, the quake has injured more than 4,500 people, damaged more than 1,500 buildings, and left 22,000 people without a roof over their heads. Teenager dies after punch from brawl in Melbourne. 19-year-old Patrick Cronin was struck from behind when a 30-person pub crawl erupted at a venue in the city's northeast on Saturday evening. He was out drinking after his first senior game of Australian rules football. There was a brawl outside of the pub, and Cronin tried to help his friends from the ground before he was attacked. He went home after being struck on the back of the head, and his family brought him to a hospital. The next day, the family confirmed that his life support had been switched off. They also say that his organs were donated to help others in need. He was also a La Trobe student. 60 Minutes team are on their way back home. After 2 weeks of sitting in jail in Lebanon, Tara Brown and her 60 Minutes team were able to go back home after being released on bail yesterday. The team was accused of helping a Brisbane mother kidnap her 2 children, aged 3 and 5, in Beirut. The father had taken them from their Australian home to Lebanon for a holiday last May and did not return. The mother has also been released and is also on her way back home to Australia. The crew celebrated their freedom with a round of Beirut beer and a meal in the airport lounge before they flew home. They arrived in Sydney in the early hours this morning. 500 refugees drowned in the Mediterranean Sea. A large ship sank in the Mediterranean Sea last week between Libya and Italy, the United Nations Refugee Agency said Wednesday. A UN team interviewed 41 survivors, consisting of 37 men, 3 women, and a 3-year-old child. According to the survivors, the vessel carrying 400 passengers capsized while it was trying to accommodate an extra 200 refugees from a smaller passing boat making its way from Libya. Only the 41 refugees managed to get back to safety on the smaller ship. This is the highest number of casualties in an accident involving refugees and migrants in the last 12 months. Coming up in the show, we have a special report about a privately funded ship offering aid and rescuing refugees in the Mediterranean Sea. Artist Prince has died in the age of 57. He was found unresponsive in an elevator at his Paisley Park compound in Chanhassen, Minnesota, shortly past midnight this morning Melbourne time. Emergency workers at the scene performed CPR but were unable to revive him. The cause of his death is not yet known, and an investigation has been opened. He had been hospitalized with what was described as the flu last week after his private jet made an emergency landing in Illinois. He toured Australia just 2 months ago. Prince Rogers Nelson was best known for her songs Kiss or Purple Rain. Stars like Robbie Williams, Madonna, and the US President Obama lead tributes to the American icon.
Yeah. Obama tweeted out, a strong spirit transcends rules, Prince once said, and nobody's spirit was stronger, bolder, or more creative.
Robbie Williams said, "Now Prince? No, no, no. R.I.P. you genius." And from Madonna, he changed the world, a true visionary. What a loss. I'm devastated. This is not a love song.
Later in the show, in our art segment, we will be paying tribute to Prince ourselves. So stay tuned.
Thanks for the news update, Marilena.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Ahmed.
And this week we have part 2 of Naim Kurt's discussion with Timothy Mayfield, the head of the Australian Republican movement.
In this discussion, he looks at the huge growth the Australian Republican movement has experienced since Tony Abbott was deposed as Prime Minister, how the group aims to harness that growth and use it to create a genuine grassroots movement.
He also discusses the impending federal election that is approaching, how the Republican issue might play in this election, Republican movement timeline for getting the issue of the Australian Republican movement back on the political agenda.
Kurt has the story.
I will, after the budget, I will advise the Governor-General to dissolve both houses of Parliament, and I will advise him to call an election on the 2nd of July.
We already have a double dissolution trigger.
Well, why don't you just double dissolution then? Get on with it. Well, that's an option. That is a live option.
The double dissolution.
Double dissolution.
Double dissolution.
Election season is in full swing in Canberra, and double dissolution is the word on everyone's lips. With the ABCC bill having been rejected, Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull has received his trigger to dissolve both houses and call an early election for July 2nd. So if both Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, Bill Shorten, being in favour of a republic, just what role, if any, will the issue of becoming a republic play in the forthcoming election? In part 2 of our 2-part discussion on where the Australian Republican movement is at, Timothy Mayfield, the National Director of the Australian Republican movement, speaks on the explosive growth in membership the group has experienced since Malcolm Turnbull came to power.
We're going gangbusters. We've, I think, quintupled our membership. We had a huge splash on Australia Day, so the Premiers and Chief Ministers of Australia declared their support in a historic document. All but one signed that document. So we've got this enormous political support, and we're beginning to see the Australian public come on side as well.
Australia Day this year was one of the most momentous days for the Australian Republican movement since 1999. On January 26th, the ARM unveiled a declaration for desired independence, which had the signatures of every state premier and territory chief minister on it, excluding West Australia's premier. With Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, a former head of the Australian Republican movement, and opposition leader Bill Shorten in favour of a republic, it means that almost every senior politician in the country is now in favour of a republic.
The last news poll conducted on the issue indicated support's back up above 50%. And if we keep going on our current trajectory, and there's no reason to think we won't, then we expect that polling will continue to shift northwards. And we really feel that we're on track for our goal, which is to have an initial plebiscite, a non-binding vote, on whether Australians want an Australian republic by 2020.
One of the main reasons for the explosive interest and growth in the Australian Republican movement was former Prime Minister Tony Abbott's decision to bring back knighthoods early last year.
That was Naim Kurt's story on the Republic and the Republican movement, And we have Kurt in the studio with us to talk about the future of the movement.
Yeah, we do. And I guess, how prominently will the issue of a Republican movement feature at this election?
I don't think it'll feature too much, but I think it will come up as a bit of a negative on Malcolm Turnbull, of course, as the criticism comes in of him. It's one of the things that he's been a big supporter of in the past. So when we're talking about whether Malcolm Turnbull's sticking to his true self at the moment, the criticism coming in that he's not following up on gay marriage, he's not following up on taxation reform, he's not following up on the Republican issue, because we know he supports it. So I think that's where the issue will play out.
Do you think, I guess the thing is right now he's stepping into a majority kind of ministry that isn't his own. This current mandate isn't his own. Do you think if he was elected that he's going to set a standard, I guess?
Yeah, it'll be difficult for him. Of course, with the Labor Party, it is a party policy that they support the Republic and making Australia a republic. But with the Liberals, it's not a party policy. And Malcolm Turnbull is on his own there as a Republican supporter. Of course, there's other people in the Liberal Party that support it, but the strong Conservative wing is very much in favour of a monarchy. And I guess that's one of those things you give up when you come into power and take on a leadership role. you have to give up some of your ideals to placate the rest of the party. And that's been the criticism of him, that he's given up some of those ideals that he favours to make a deal with the conservative element of his party to become leader of the country.
So why is the support for Republic so low amongst young people?
Yeah, it's a good question. In the story, we talked about that it's not generally that young people are against the Republic. It's just that they're not so much in favour of it. And I think it comes down to the fact that it's not very much known how our constitution works in Australia. So young people are not so much against the Republic, it's just that they're not aware of the issue. And the thing will be for the Australian Republican movement to make that a issue and get the conscience of the young people to vote. I think there's also been some polling done in 2012, so that found that young people are quite scared of the future, that they're worried about fears about terrorism, fears about the rise of China, and there is kind of a longing amongst Australians to have that protection from the Great Britain. And so I think there is some concern too amongst young people that perhaps moving into an uncertain future, it's better to have those closer ties with Great Britain so we can rely on them in the future in case of emergencies or questions about national security.
And I guess like you talk about the Constitution there, in terms of like referenda, like what kind of requirements are needed to see that change happen?
Yeah, so to get a referendum up in Australia is notoriously difficult. There is something that's called a double majority. So to get a change to our constitution, it needs to have a majority of the voters across Australia. So that's more than 50% of voters across Australia must favour the proposal to change the constitution. And it also must get a majority of the states. And that's where it becomes difficult, because a majority of the states, we have 6 states in Australia, you need to get 4 states in favour of having a change to the constitution. So you have to have what we call as a double majority. And so you could get more than 50% of the population supporting it. But if the smaller states, say Tasmania, South Australia, West Australia, if they all do not favour a republic, then the question will fail again. So that's the difficulty in getting it up.
I
suppose the question to you, Lisa, is you are Canadian, so how does the issue play out in Canada? What's the Canadians' views of the monarchy?
It's a lot like what you said. Young people have less of an awareness of the monarchy and the Republican movement. Canada in general is a lot like that. It doesn't come up a lot. We don't have a Republican movement.
Doesn't feature at all?
Doesn't feature at all. And,
okay.
Yeah.
How is the monarchy felt amongst the French Canadian population too? Because you've got that large minority group there.
Of that group, I would want it less than the rest of the country. But
do you think it just like doesn't really feature because, like, similar to like in Australia, the monarchy isn't really present in everyday life. Oh my God, we've got to think about the Queen. We've got to think of the British Empire and all that kind of stuff. So, is it the same kind of thing in Canada?
I think so, and I think Australia has more of a connection to Great Britain and just that culture, whereas Canada has more of a connection to American culture. So it's North America has that same kind of. We don't. I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Just connect on that level, I suppose.
One of the big things for the Australian Republican movement was in 1975 when they removed the Prime Minister, Gough Whitlam, and that was done at the behest of the Governor-General on behalf of the Queen. So I guess there's...
Yeah, and I guess that's probably the only time there's ever been a sort of issue or anything like that where the monarchy stepped in. And I guess that's because there was so much change happening during that period as well, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a huge upheaval in the political situation, and the government was quite unstable at the time. And depending on which side of history you fall, some people think it was the worst thing that ever happened, and some people think it was the right move in the end.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Kurt, for coming on the show.
Not a problem.
I wonder where the Republican movement's going to go.
No, you're listening to Upstart Live with me, Lisa Burke, and Ahmed Yusuf. It is 1:15. You can listen to us at upstart.net.au. And at the beginning of the show, we mentioned the tragic deaths of up to 500 migrants who drowned in the Mediterranean Sea.
A group of dedicated volunteers are trying to change the situation on SOS Mediterranean, a ship funded with private donation that is working to help refugees.
Marilena Dahlmann spoke to German journalist Dennis Leifels, who has been working on the ship with the crew.
When you help them out of the boat and onto the deck, you can see that they are completely exhausted. Some of them can no longer stand up on their own. They are cold, they are barefoot. There are pregnant women who drag themselves on deck. It's then you realise what kind of misery they're in, and how much pressure must be on these people to embark on such a trip.
Wie groß der Druck bei den Menschen sein muss, dass sie sich auf so eine Reise begeben.
The charity SOS Mediterranean was started 1.5 years ago. The German founder Klaus Vogel saw images of refugees drowning off the coast of Lampedusa on television, and he wondered, why are humans drowning? We are in Europe. We are a rich continent. Why are we just watching while people die? He flew to the Italian coast to watch the refugees arrive and assess the situation. He made a promise to the people there that he would come back with the ship and he would no longer watch people drowning. The project was privately funded and embarked in February this year.
Auf dem Schiff der SOS Mediterranean arbeiten etwa 23 Personen darunter.
There are about 23 people working on the ship, including doctors and nurses, who have built a small clinic on the boat. Another team conducts a rescue, and then there is a team of volunteers. Among them is a student who fled from Syria himself a few years ago. During his university holidays, he helps on the boat in order to save lives.
In the time in which Mr. Leifels was on the SOS Mediterranean, he performed in 3 rescue operations. All SOS signals sent by refugees leaving the 12-mile zone are coordinated from the control center in Rome. The ships which are close by are then notified.
Das heißt, kommt ein Notruf rein, dann...
If an emergency call is received, everything on the ship works automatically. It will set course for the last position, and the rescue crew is on deck, looking through their binoculars at the ocean again and again in search of refugees, or for their small boats in the hopes of finding them. The Mediterranean Sea is huge, and you can only see the refugee boats as they crest the horizon. It's incredibly hard to figure out if an object is a boat or a buoy or something else.
Unglaublich schwer herauszufinden, ist das jetzt ein Boot oder ist das eine Boje oder was auch immer.
Dennis is convinced that the project is successful. The crew of SOS Mediterranean saved more than 600 lives in recent weeks. Among them were pregnant women, small children and babies.
Ja, es ist ein Erfolg und mir hat es auch gezeigt.
It is theoretically easy to save a life. You just need a boat and a couple of people and it works. This experience has shown me how mad this world is. There are people risking their lives to cross the Mediterranean Sea, and most of Europe looks away and says, we cannot do anything anyway. But yes, we can do something. And the successful projects like the SOS Mediterranean shows that society can do something and needs to.
Dass die Gesellschaft auch was tun kann und auch tun muss.
This has been Marilena Dahlmann for Upstart Live.
Thanks, Marilena, for that story.
Yeah, particularly timely because of the recent number of over 400 migrants dying at sea, and the Somali government released a statement about the refugee and migrant crisis right now, about how they said that over 200 Somali citizens died at sea.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you, it was especially devastating because, I'm Somali, and I know a lot of I've got family in Somalia and Kenya who've actually contemplated finding refuge on a boat. And I guess it's because we have this lot of discussion about refugee and migrants and whether they're coming to Europe and stealing people's jobs and all that kind of discussion. And I guess moments like this puts people, it stops people in their tracks because who is going to go on a boat and risk their life. And like, I think like there was over 500, only 42 people survived. So
Yeah.
that I think 41 or 42 people survived. So that just tells people that, you know, like people aren't risking their lives for no reason.
Exactly. They're leaving for a reason when the danger is so high.
Definitely. Like, yeah. Like, and I've conversations with mom about family that they're so desperate to find a situation that they can, you know, like they have a reasonable chance of life and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And I feel like that reality is lost in a lot of senses.
For sure it is, yeah.
You're listening to Upstart Live at La Trobe University Studios. We're on every Friday from 1 p.m. It's 21 past, and if you want to get in touch with us, go on the social media channels, Upstart, at Upstart Media, at Upstart Magazine on Twitter, Facebook, and Snapchat. You know, snap us what you think. You know, maybe we're gonna. No, we can't really share it on the show, but we'll watch it and we'll recognize you. You know, Australia is known for its sporting ability and it's a sporting nation. And we all love our sports, and we especially love our gambling.
Yeah, figures released by the Victorian Responsible Gambling Foundation show punters are spending more than $20 billion annually. Sports fans are seeing gambling as something that adds to the experience, meaning they're spending more.
And many of these fans are young men who use their mobile apps to bet. Like you got betting apps everywhere, and they're so widespread and so easy to bet right now. So Alana Mazurk looks at this growing trend.
I will, after the budget.
Sports betting in Australia is worth $3 billion annually, and the market is growing by 20% a year. Online sports betting is not a huge part of the overall betting market. One credible study in 2014 found the proportion of gamblers wagering on sports other than horse racing was only a bit above 5%, way behind other forms such as racing and the pokies. But where other forms of gambling are stable, online sports betting is growing fast, and the amount of money spent on it is growing even faster. I recently spoke to Emily Grace Dean, a PhD student at Deakin University.
It's called the third person effect, so people might be willing to think that it influences other people, but they're very tentative, I guess, to acknowledge that it would influence their own behaviours. But one of the things that we've kind of found, which I think is a good example of how it can influence behaviours, is the promotions, so the cashback offers and the bonus bets and things like that. Those particular promotions, young men were more likely to sort of go, yeah, no, I think they're a little bit more influential, rather than, you know, the other sort of marketing. But again, it's that perspective from, yes, it influences other people, but it doesn't influence me.
I always said I would never get an online betting account because I just assumed it would be too tempting.
That was Alana Mazurk talking about the growing trend of gambling apps.
Yeah, sorry for we're having a bit of technical difficulties at the moment. Hopefully we'll get that sorted really quickly. But, you know...
Now we have, moving on, we have the second part of our report on the privatization of the space race.
Last week, producer Max Robbins spoke with Dr. Alan Duffy about how SpaceX is leading an unprecedented number of private companies in a push to push the boundaries of space exploration and travel.
Yeah. This week he spoke to us again about Breakthrough Starshot, a new privately funded project led by Dr. Stephen Hawking, which aims to explore our nearest stars in the very near future.
We are here today to talk about Breakthrough Starshot and our future in space. With light beams, light sails, and the lightest spacecraft ever built, we can launch a mission to Alpha Centauri within a generation.
So very simply, Breakthrough Starshot is taking a tiny postage stamp sized spacecraft with a light sail that will actually ride the pressure of the force that a beam of light produces, just like a wind blowing a sail. You get up to the incredible speed of a fifth of the speed of light, and then you can reach one of the closest stars to Earth, Alpha Centauri, in 20 years. Now, that idea that in our lifetime we could reach another star is just mind-blowing. I mean, I can't even believe I'm saying that sentence. And that's because we had a superbly advanced spacecraft, New Horizons, which just did a flyby of Pluto. This was an unbelievable achievement and widely heralded and front page news around the world. It took nearly 10 years to get to Pluto. That same spacecraft, which is the peak of our technological ability right now, that would take 30,000 years to get to this star. But Breakthrough want to do it in 20. Now, that is an exceptionally ambitious project. What surprised me was that they invested $100 million, and Breakthrough has the funds to do more than that. They are bankrolled by Yuri Milner, the billionaire, as well as Mark Zuckerberg, of course, founder of Facebook. So certainly the money is there. Whether they can overcome the physical challenges or not is not clear. But when I looked at a breakdown of the ideas behind Breakthrough Starshot, it's feasible. It's not easy, but it's actually surprisingly feasible. And key to that is that over the next 10 to 15, 20 years, you're relying on all of the trends in advancing technology, in the costs of lasers continuing to exponentially decline. Now, whether that continues or not, I don't know, but certainly right now, if you extrapolate out, suddenly 10, 15 years from now, you can build this, and you can build it for about the cost of a US aircraft carrier, a single US aircraft carrier, and you could get to space. You could, I mean, forget landing on the moon. I mean, like, that was great, don't get me wrong, and baby boomers are always rightly crowing about where they were when they saw this. In my lifetime, I could see us get to the nearest star. We could become interstellar. That is an achievement that is well worth pursuing. Whether or not it's possible, well, we'll discover the next few years, but it's certainly one of the most exciting things I've ever heard of. They're engineers. They're going to figure this out. And certainly they employ the right people to figure this out. And they've got the funds to bankroll the research. So no matter what happens with this Starshot, the technological spin-off is going to be incredible. It will truly change telecommunications. The lasers they're developing will be vastly better than any other form of communication we currently have through space. These miniature spacecraft are actually going to be the perfect way to monitor, in a very much a natural evolution, monitor the Earth. That is going to be the biggest change while we wait for the spacecraft to make its way to this star, and then who knows what we see when we're there.
That was Max Robbins' story on the privatization of the space race. Thanks.
Thanks, Max. So what's been going on the interwebs?
Yeah, we have our Upstart media editor here, Rudy Edsel, telling us what kind of stories are on Upstart this week.
Hi guys, I'm actually the editor, not just the media editor.
Sorry, editor.
He is
it's
the editor.
The editor.
The title is very important to me. The only reason I took the job.
Okay.
So I've got a couple of decent stories up this week, actually. The first one I wanted to talk about was from sort of early this week. We had our politics editor, Matt Almus, who is a sensational journalist. He went to a Labor launch, the campaign launch in McEwen, and he spoke to Bill Shorten, actually. So we've got an interview with the sitting opposition leader, which is pretty exciting for us.
Exclusive.
He didn't give us a huge amount of detail, as you would expect, but it was pretty nice to have Bill Shorten tells Upstart on our page.
What did he say? What was the interview about?
It was basically about the voters of McEwen. It's more of we're sort of crossing over a bit of content with Unipoll Watch this semester, and it was just about the voters of McEwen and how Labor plan to target them. Basically, Bill Shorten said, "I was very impressed with how the voters have a small view on Craigieburn and a larger view on the rest of Australia." It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't groundbreaking stuff, but it was pretty cool to have Bill Shorten interviewed by one of our journos. It's pretty exciting. We had a bit of a meteor one as well with the child protection laws story. It's Tracy Stewart has done a bit of work up in Darwin, and she
higher right now. The removal rates are higher than they were during the stolen generation as well.
Oh, that's a stat I hadn't seen, but that's remarkable if true. And that sort of Tracy was argues that sort of points to issues with the way the system is viewing the Aboriginal families up there, and she says that Naja, they want a more sort of a holistic approach. They want the families to be more involved in the decision-making process, which is, in my opinion, quite reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a story up in the culture and lifestyle section, one of our more underutilised sections this semester, unfortunately. Our first video piece, it's by Claire Varley and Peter DiStefano. It's about the struggles that young actors face.
So what kind of struggles do they face?
Basically, a massive oversupply of labour and undersupply of paid work. It's
I feel like
kind of like journalism.
I feel like
something we can relate to.
Yeah. If you're a young actor, you're either trying to get on Neighbours or Home and Away, and then after that, send your stuff
out of
to
the
the
country.
States, because like there are a ton of former Home and Away and Neighbours stars that have been there for like a year or two, sent their stuff to the States to be on obscure television series there, and then have gotten jobs from there.
And then a couple of years later, they come back and they're on Neighbours and Home and Away again.
Exactly.
Thus completing the circle. No, well, it's more, the issues are more with the internet. They say it was, what's the quote here is that the internet was less engaging 20 years ago and not explored as a medium for actors, and now you have guys like that Friendly Geordie's character up in Sydney who makes his own videos and gets it out there in that way, and all of a sudden you've not only got this massive pool of underutilized actors, you've also got a bunch of people doing more amateur stuff as well. So the
saturation?
Yeah, saturation. It just becomes more and more difficult. I highly recommend you watch the video. They interview Jorge Sipos and Adam Doreen about the show they're trying to get up called Purgatorio, and it's pretty fascinating stuff. We also got a story out from Caitlin Leggett about deregulation.
That's a growing issue right now, especially because the Liberal Party are trying to get another bill up, I think.
Well, they've canned the actual uni fee deregulation, but they do want to lower the threshold for the higher education loan repayment. They want to lower it from about, I think it's 54,000 at the moment. They want to lower it to 44, which is not too far above minimum wage, and that's obviously annoyed a lot of students who, you don't want to be starting to get on your feet and having to already start repaying your loans.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, because it's difficult if you're not making
money right away.
Yeah, money right away. If you
or a very low wage.
Because a lot of people can be just getting that around that 40,000 something mark. Mm-hmm. And not be in the best situation and be struggling for work.
Oh yeah, for sure. Or not even get work in their field and
definitely
unemployed for a while.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rudy, for coming on the show.
No worries.
And stay tuned. We're gonna have the sports segment coming up in a moment. With Carl Humphreys and Toby Chapman to talk all about sports, all about the happenings of the week.
Yeah. Hi, guys.
How you going?
Good, how are you?
Fantastic. As always.
Pleasure to be here once again. Kyle, we've got an exciting 10 minutes coming up. How are you going?
Yeah, as I said, pretty good. So, let's get stuck into it.
We've got a big week with A-League finals kicking off last weekend, and we're joined today by a special guest to discuss everything that happened and to look forward to this week's action. Our guest is Fox Sports football commentator Simon Hill. Welcome to the show, Simon.
How are you guys? All right?
Good, thanks. It was a dramatic first week of the final series, especially Friday night's game up in Brisbane. What did you make of it?
Well, it's typical finals football, I suppose, isn't it? Because everything's on the line, you tend to get those late bits of drama, which we certainly got in Brisbane last Friday. I have to say I felt rather sorry for Melbourne Victory. I thought that they dominated large parts of the game. But Brisbane found two match winners, really, when they needed it most. Matt Mackay and Thomas Broich have been there, done it, got the T-shirts, and, they found a little bit of inspiration and quality when they needed it the most. That's the way it goes in football sometimes.
Simon, it's Ahmed here. Do you think Brisbane were kind of hurting after the previous week, not just missing out on the Premier's plate, so that created extra emphasis?
Well, look, I'm sure they were hurting, but I'm not sure that played any part in the final result. I mean, if you're looking for, little reasons as to why the game changed in those last few minutes, you could argue that Victory celebrated that goal, which looked to be the match winner, let's be fair, a little bit too hard. I mean, Bethel Barisha was in the crowd for quite some time. You can understand it, an emotional moment. But did they switch off just for that fraction of a second to hand the impetus back to Brisbane? I think it's a possibility, and the old saying is that you're never more vulnerable than when you've just scored. And unfortunately for Victory, that was the way it proved to be.
Brisbane have a real history of doing this. Can you ever count them out in finals?
No, I don't think so, because they've got players, as I say, who've been there, done it, got the T-shirt, and they know what it takes to win. And in finals football, where the teams are so evenly matched, particularly this year, sometimes it can take that little bit of inspiration or know-how or quality. And Brisbane have got it in spades. Look, to be fair, Victory have got it as well. They've got match winners too, but it just so happens that on that particular night it was Brisbane that held sway. And I think the other important thing that we tend to underestimate in finals football, and this has been statistically proven going back through the years, if you're at home, you've got a massive advantage. I think only 10 teams out of 60 odd have managed to win an away finals game in the 90 minutes at least without resorting to penalties. So, it's a big advantage playing in front of your own fans.
Hi Simon, it's Kyle here. Adelaide United play against Melbourne City. They only met 2 weeks ago in a pretty fiery clash. Do you think that fire will be on show again tonight?
Oh, I'm sure it will be, because there's such a big prize at stake. Obviously, I hope that it doesn't spill over into the brawl that we saw at half time down the players' race. Although, if you're being a cynic, you'd probably say that wasn't necessarily a bad thing, because it gave us more publicity as a sport. But you'd hope that things were settled in the right manner. But again, they're so evenly matched. It's difficult to try and pick a winner. On one hand, you've got the quality individually of Melbourne City, Fornaroli and Moy, and Navio, of course. They're three big match winners. Adelaide probably more of a collective, and they've been so consistent down the months, which is a very difficult thing to achieve for A-League teams, given the salary cap situation. So, again, I'm leaning towards Adelaide, probably on the strength of the fact that they are at home. They'll have a capacity crowd behind them, and that might just be enough to get them over the line.
Have you been surprised by, Adelaide's upsurge in form in the past couple of months?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, you remember back at the start of the season how they, I don't think they won a game for the first 8 matches, but they've managed to get into a groove. It obviously took a while for Guillermo Moore to get his message across. They're not quite as flamboyant as they were under Joseph Gombau, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think they're able to adapt their tactics much more specifically to the opposition that they're playing, and that's probably one of the reasons why they've been more consistent once they found their groove. And of course, individuals have an impact as well. The form of Karuska, the fact that Bruce Jitte has found his goal-scoring form fantastically well over the last couple of months. They've got a great pinch hitter on the bench in Pablo Sanchez if they need him. And defensively, they're solid, particularly impressed by the form of Dylan McGowan this year. He's not really got a lot of headlines, but I think he's been key, and understandable why Sydney FC wanted to sign him, which it appears they have done for next season.
Melbourne City are coming off a 5-day break after their game against Perth, while Adelaide had the week off. Do you think that has any effect at all?
It's difficult to know, isn't it? There's always two ways of looking at this. Is it good to have a rest, or do you want to continue with momentum? Only the players and the coaches really know how they're feeling. I would say, obviously, in terms of kilometres in the legs, then Adelaide will have the advantage because they have been able to rest. Melbourne City just 5 days away, but they'll come into this game on such a high because they played so well against Perth. The intensity was there from the first whistle against Perth, which it wasn't there in the 90 minutes against Adelaide the week before. So if they can replicate that John Van Skip's team, then they'll have a very good chance of winning because, as I've already outlined, they have those individual qualities from the likes of Fornaroli and Moy. The flip side is that they've had to travel. They've not got 16,000 fans on their side, and they might be a little bit more tired than Adelaide. But it's, we're talking half a percentages here. It's that close. I think this is the first season really when any of the teams in the top six, in my opinion, could have gone on and won the title. Obviously, Perth and Victory are now gone, but of the four that are left in, there's barely a cigarette paper between them.
The Wanderers play Sunday against the Raw, and the Raw striker Jamie McLaren has quite the record this season against the Wanderers with 5 goals in 3 games. Do you think the Wanderers have to nullify his influence to win?
Oh, of course they do. I mean, that's one of the key areas. But just as important is stopping the service from getting to him in the first place. And I think key to that, obviously, is shutting down Corona, especially in midfield. Dimi Petratos, for me, has been one of the most improved players in the entire competition over the last 2 or 3 months. His energy in midfield is going to be key. So I think that's where the game is going to be won and lost. There's big quality on both teams in that area of the park. The Spanish influence for the Wanderers and Mitch Nichols has had a very good campaign as well. If you can shut down those players, then obviously you shut down the service for the strikers and the goal scorers. So again, another very, very tight contest. I'm leaning towards the Wanderers again, only by virtue really that they're at home.
Simon, who's your tip to win overall?
Well, given that I've gone for the 2 home teams and all that I've said about home advantage, I suppose I should say Adelaide. I've had a sneaking suspicion throughout the season that the Wanderers might just finish on top. There's no scientific research behind that really, but just more of a gut feeling. So I'd say Adelaide Wanderers in the grand final, and maybe the Wanderers to sneak it, maybe even on penalties.
Right, thank you very much for your time, Simon.
Thanks,
a good day.
Simon. Thank you, mate.
That was Simon Hill from Fox Sports. You're listening to the Friday Sports Report with Toby Chapman and Kyle Humphreys. Now it's on to the AFL, where the biggest news this week was the end of the grand final replay, following a commission meeting on Tuesday.
We will no longer replay the grand final. The following will occur in the event of a drawn grand final. 5 minutes of additional time, plus time on. Should the scores remain tied, they will continue until the next score by either team.
So my opinion on the grand final change, I'm not really a fan of it. I do like the replay. It's an extra barbecue the next weekend. It does throw out cricket season though, which does affect the premier cricket around here. They have to rearrange their draw because no one wants to play on grand final day. But I think they're going about it a little bit the wrong way. The extra time and the golden point, I think it's a bit... I don't like it. I don't want to see a grand final decided by some bloke handballing or spoiling a mark in the goal square. I just don't think that's how it should be done. But if that's what they decide to do, that's what they decide to do.
Kind of reminds me of like the golden goal that was I think David Trezeguet scored the Euro 2000 winner by a golden goal against Italy. It was just weird though. It was just weird. And then FIFA decided, hey, maybe we're just going to throw this out.
We'll certainly see how it goes.
Yeah, so Richmond's start to the season has been a disappointing one, capped off by a big loss to West Coast last week. Coach Damien Hardwick remains optimistic though.
To get our game up and going, it's funny. It might take one quarter, and then all of a sudden you get things back on track. So this group is more than capable. I'm incredibly confident with our playing group, so I've got great faith that we'll get back to the footy we know we can play.
So Richmond are currently sitting 13th at 1-3. The only win was unimpressive against Carlton. They got Melbourne this week. They've been pretty good the last 2 weeks, but if they lose here, they've got Port next week, which is winnable. But after that, they've got Hawthorn and Sydney, and they're going to be tough to win. So you'd think these two will be very, very important games. But another team that's struggling is Collingwood. They suffered an unexpected loss to a fired-up Melbourne side, and this week they face Essendon in the high-pressure Anzac Day clash. A loss could leave coach Nathan Buckler's job in limbo. Earlier in the week, skipper Scott Benbury looked to take the heat away from the coach and back onto the playing staff.
If guys are thinking that all the pressure's just going on Nathan and not on them, they're kidding themselves. If you dish up a poor game and think that Bucks is going to cop it for you, you shouldn't be in the caper.
So Collingwood should beat Essendon. On paper, they should, really. If they don't, Buckley's job's in trouble. There's David Zaharakis, who just seems to rock up on Anzac Day and spoil Collingwood's day. He's done that a couple of times. There's no Dane Swan, who pretty much does it the other way around. So I think Collingwood will win, but they're not going to win by a lot, and it's probably not going to be a really high-quality game.
If Collingwood do lose, can you see Nathan Buckley being sacked?
I can see him being sacked, but I'm not sure who's going to replace him. They've got Robert Harvey, Ben Hart, and Scotty Burns. I just don't think much is going to change. I think they're all pretty similar. I think it's just deep set culture-wise. I just don't know what's going on down there.
Massive news from the UFC this week, where featherweight champion Conor McGregor took to Twitter, seemingly announcing his retirement, saying, "I've decided to retire young. Thanks for the cheese. Catch yous later." Overnight, though, he clarified in an explosive Facebook post that he will not be retiring and wants to return and defend his championship. McGregor had earlier arrived in Iceland to continue his training and preparation, ahead of his UFC 200 fight against Nate Diaz. The UFC pulled McGregor from the fight after he refused to fly to Las Vegas to do promotion. Thanks for joining us on the Sports Report. I'm Toby Chapman alongside Kyle Humphreys. We'll be back after 2 o'clock to take you through all of this weekend's sport, but for now it's back to you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, that was a great wrap. We got Simon Hill on. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, special thanks to Simon Hill for joining us on the show.
And you know, it's just 40. It's 13 to 2. You're listening to Upstart Live at Latrobe Studios. You can find us and watch the show every week from upstart.net.au. So make sure to find us there. Tune in. And again, remember, you can hear the rest of the sports wrap from 2.
So now we have Ben McCready and Max Robbins joining us for the art update.
Yeah, and I guess like in this age of social media, we are inundated with entertainment content. But where can we get all our insight from? And I guess Ben and Max is going to help us with that.
Hi, guys.
Hi. Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. That was great.
Of course, yeah.
This week, I feel like it's kind of been dominated by the recent tragic breaking news of Prince's death.
Absolutely.
You know, the music industry has lost a symbol and an icon here, and I say that as someone who's not really a huge fan of Prince. You know, I know of him. I think everyone does, but yeah, it's being felt across the world, really.
Yeah, especially with all the recent losses of. We had, David Bowie and then Glenn Frey.
Lemmy.
Yeah.
Motorhead. Sorry, that's just me, maybe.
No, that's another big one.
Like Whitney died just a few years ago.
Michael Jackson died a couple of years ago.
Alan Rickman as well.
Yeah.
It's
just too many.
Where are they all going?
They're going to space. David Bowie took them all to space.
Getting
out of this.
That's a great
out
gig.
Of this earth.
I'd like to attend that gig.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I can relate, Ben, because I haven't always been his biggest fan. In fact, I had the pleasure to attend an Opera House show of his in Sydney just 2 months ago in February. You can check out photos of that gig just on the stream right now. To be honest, my main writing motivation to go to this gig was that, one, David Bowie had just passed away, Alan Rickman had just passed away, as we mentioned, a few other celebrities had passed away recently. And in my head, I was like, he's one of those larger-than-life characters, one of those artists that has contributed so much to the music industry and even just pop culture, more generally speaking. I felt like I had to see him at least once in my life. And that's the main reason I went. And
lucky you did.
Lucky I did. You know, not to be morbid about it or anything, but I came out of it as a fan of his. As I said, I can relate. I'm not his biggest fan. I have some friends of mine who wrote eulogies this morning on Facebook, covered my whole Facebook feed. And I'm not one of those fans, but I did appreciate his musical talent, of which he had plenty.
He just played everything. He did everything. anything imaginable, R&B, rock,
funk, obviously,
funk, jazz,
and all the instruments that he played too. Like he was a one-man band essentially. That's
Basically,
incredible.
It's funny. I have a friend of mine, Rob Brickman, he's an engineer and producer over at Rack Studios in London, and a lot of the producers he works with have actually worked with Prince in the past, and so he's fed me quite a few anecdotes of what it's like to work with Prince, and he's known in the media to be quite a controlling presence, control freak, and I think that comes from his perfectionism. But one of these anecdotes was that any recording musician or any session musician he played with, he would fine hundreds of dollars for every single mistake they would play, that they would make while playing with him, which would rack up thousands of dollars worth of bills for those musicians. But they love it. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to play with this musical perfectionist who pretty much for every song he played ended up playing every single instrument and recorded them himself, which is quite remarkable. But that's the persona he sort of gave off. He was very much a divisive character.
You either loved him or hated him.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Much like his movie Purple Rain, which actually won a Grammy, but it's a terrible movie.
Well,
Don't say that to his fans though. But
do you know what I kind of like? I loved how there was a point in his career where it was like Michael Jackson versus Prince, and it was like one-upmanship between them. And I guess like it's kind of sad now they're both gone. It's
I can't think of any artists now. The only ones other than that, I guess might be a bad reference, but in the 90s, Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera had that rivalry. They were not as good musicians, but they still had that rivalry going on.
Pop wars.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's funny because he still made himself quite relevant as, he's had, dozens and dozens of albums, I think over 30. And he still managed to make himself relevant, especially today in this ongoing debate about streaming music versus, physical and copyright issues,
Didn't
album
he stop
copies.
Spotify from using his music?
He stopped pretty much any online platform. If you YouTube or if you Google his music, you will not find much of anything except for like licensed things or official music videos. This is the extent of his control. I think he was once quoted as saying that you had to own your masters or the masters will own you. That influenced his whole persona. And so there was this one lawsuit, for example, I think back in 2007, where he actually sued a regular American family, the Lenz family, because...
Oh, yes, I remember this.
Because they posted a video of their baby dancing, and in the background, and this was barely audible, but in the background, his song Let's Go Crazy was playing. And he sued this family, and he ended up losing that lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the extent of the control he wanted over his empire, over his brand.
Which is interesting. And maybe a little bit too much control, but I think it sets a good example for, new musicians who frequently play for free and just like setting a standard for yourself to be recognized for your art.
Be the best.
Mm-hmm.
I think it says a lot as well. As I said, from a personal point of view, I went to his show 2 months ago. Not knowing much about his music other than his hits, I've come out a big fan.
Mm-hmm.
And, 2 months from this unfortunate tragedy, I have, he's still making fans.
For sure.
Yeah. And he's changing lives.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Prince. You were an amazing musician. Thanks for that, guys. We're going to be moving to our segment, What the What?
What the What?
Thank you, guys.
Has any news report or story made you scratch your head and wonder what? Think, how can this be?
Oh, yeah, to collect all those whats and hows, we have Alana Mazurk to take us through What the What?
Yes, hello guys, every week. I've actually had some help from our other producers from Kyle and Marilena and even Matt, who has sent me through some pretty great stories. This is the first one from Kyle. A student who drunkenly managed to stumble into a stranger's flat has made himself comfortable in a spare bed and has spent the night there. When the 22-year-old student woke up on the Sunday morning, he said he had no idea how he ended up in the bed. The bewildered couple living in the flat initially called the police after failing to understand how their invited guests had entered their home. Local police were called to the flat that Sunday morning, but when the confused young man apologised for making use of their spare bed without invitation, they eventually saw the funny side. He explained that he had been at a nightclub in the area on Saturday night and was drunk. obviously. Don't have to explain that. He admitted that he had no idea how he ended up in the unknown city centre apartment. Do you know what's funny? This isn't the first time that it's happened either. I've
I had
looked
a
into
friend
other
that
stories.
did that. That went into the wrong house and slept on the couch.
But they live.
But the house was but the house was open though.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
how
crazy.
Was the apartment open? And I don't think he lived anywhere near the city centre apartment for the reports I was reading. He lives nowhere near it. He's just gone, I'm tired. This door, I didn't even know how he even tested. Maybe
I'm just going to find the first bed and sleep there.
Gonna knock on every door,
Yeah.
gonna see what's open and just try something.
Now this one's from Marilena, and she warned us not to consider Germans as all of these people, and not to have a bad view on Germans after this. But a German tourist has survived on honey, for almost 5 days after crashing his car southeast of Adelaide. Alexander Stelling, who's 32, was taken to Tailem Bend District Hospital because he crashed his black Renault and then decided that he didn't know where he was, so he left his phone and passport in the car and went for a walk. And then yesterday morning, I did read this yesterday, so Wednesday morning, sorry everyone, the German knocked on the door of Frank and Marie Henderson's property just 3 kilometres from the crash site. Mr. Henderson says he believes the 33-year-old survived by taking honey from his shed and leaving money for it. So he actually went into his shed and stole honey and left money. That rhymes.
But he didn't bother knocking on the door?
Didn't bother knocking on the door. And it's funny because this is so Australian. Mr. Henderson said he's obviously copped a whack on the head. And that was his statement, and that was it.
Yeah, it's interesting that he left his phone too.
I know, yeah.
He just left his ID
key.
and every.
It's 3 kilometres. It's not that far.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, but still, like, it's kind of.
No, but I mean, like, why? This whole story is just crazy. He just could have saved his car.
I want to know what his thought process through
Yeah.
every step was. You know, like, I'm going to leave my phone and ID in the car, and
I don't think there was one. Now, this is absolutely disgusting, so I have to talk about it. You know Hershey's chocolate, which is very American? Well, they've decided to put it on the back burner in order to focus on a new product, meat bars.
Meat bars?
Not Mars bars, meat bars.
Meat.
Starting this summer, they will introduce a souped-up version of jerky from its Pure Foods division, some other division. And the flavours include black cherry barbecue, basil citrus, and pineapple orange. Yeah, like meat snacks. It's disgusting. I don't know.
is it like beef jerky with other flavors in it?
Not 100% sure. From the pictures, it just looks like a chocolate bar.
But who would eat a meat bar?
Well,
So many people. So many people would do that.
We don't understand American cuisine, I think.
Well, I think our man behind the scenes, Matt Coburn, was like nodding his head in agreement that he would buy one.
Ew, that's gross. They're just saying, I think the thing is that, like, now that the health food products is, like, the market is growing, they're saying that not enough people are buying enough chocolate. So they're like, what else can we do? And, yeah.
Let's just add some meat into it and make it chunky.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Now, Matt sent me through this one. Donald Trump, who has made his advocacy for New York City after the 9/11 attack central to his candidacy.
I saw this.
Candidacy. Oh my God. Has referred to it on Monday as 7-Eleven.
Yeah, I saw that.
What a ding dong. Oh my God. This is what he said. He said he even wrote this out. It's very close to my heart. Quote, because I was down there and I watched our police and our firemen down at 7-Eleven at the Trade Center, I saw the greatest people I've ever seen in action. And that ends it. That's all I've got.
That is a
That's
great
enough.
What the what. Thanks, Alana.
No worries,
Thanks,
guys.
Alana.
Everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Upstart Live.
And thanks to executive producer Phil Kafkalutis, senior producer Max Robbins, sports producer Carl Humphreys, reporters Ben McCready, Toby Chapman, Lana Mazur, Marlena Dahlman, and the rest of our team and reporters and producers. Our music is by Mini Coop, and many thanks to our intern behind the scenes who wants a meat bar, Matt Coburn.
Yes, and now we have Toby Chapman and Kyle Humphreys.
It's good to be back in here. It's only been 5 minutes, but it feels like a lifetime. We get to fully flesh out our opinions now, Kyle. Isn't this exciting?
Yeah, we do. We get to, maybe spray. Probably not quite spray, but yeah, just get to have a bit of a chat.
Oh, who knows with you in here? Bit of a loose cannon.
Yeah, not really. No, I'm not. He's just joking, boys and girls listening out there. He's just joking.
Any potential employers?
Yes, and any potential employers.
First up on the agenda, we're going back to the AFL. It's been announced today who Port Adelaide will play in China next season. Gold Coast have been named the team. They beat out Melbourne, GWS and Collingwood to be the rival. Interestingly, they'll be paid more than $600,000 for the trip, and it will further benefit their sponsorship agreements with Chinese technology company Huawei. It's quite interesting because all the talk was about the benefits for Port. It seems they've found someone to host there who the benefits will be quite similar.
The Gold Coast are going over. They could probably do it with a bit of a splash. Surprised that Collingwood's mentioned in that conversation to go over to play to China because it's it'll cost them one of their 1 in 18 games they get to play at the MCG, which it's probably Eddie wouldn't be too keen on that. So anything to boost the peripheral teams, as I'd call them, not quite the big four or Adelaide, West Coasts. It's very good for the game. Still have the issues with the pollution and everything in Shanghai or China in general. And just the welfare of the players is going to be probably paramount.
Absolutely. Even more excitingly, we're joined by the Upstart editor and one of my favourite podcast people, Rudy Edsel. Rudy, how are you?
I'm good, Toby. It's wonderful to be here with you beautiful men.
Oh, Rudy, you're making me blush. I think we might get into the weekend's games. Tonight is a pretty massive one. It's Hawthorn versus Adelaide, and Adelaide's been in pretty exciting form. They've got a very dominant attacking lineup. Hawthorn struggled and probably should have lost against St Kilda last week. What are your thoughts on tonight's game, boys?
My thoughts, I reckon Adelaide will win. I hope they win. There's a few good matchups. We've got the much publicised matchup with Eddie Betts, and I think it's, who is it? I'm trying to think of his name.
Ben Stratton, would he go?
Ben Stratton, yeah, that's it. Ben Stratton. So,
of course, Stratton did an excellent job on Jake Stringer only a few weeks ago. He's probably one of, if not the best, lockdown defender in the comp at the moment.
Yeah, they're very organised, Hawthorn's back six, so...
Isn't everyone that plays for Hawthorn the best at something?
Yes. And they have been for a long time and probably will be for a long time, unfortunately.
They've got... if they can cut down Betts, I see Betts as a bit of a barometer for how Adelaide are going. When he's up and about, they're going very well, and when he's quiet, there's just another goal kicker that's gone missing. So if Betts can break this hoodoo off Stratton, I reckon Adelaide are well on their way to winning.
I'm not sure how to read this one. I think I'd really love to see Adelaide get up, purely as in a romantic sense, but it's just hard to look past the sort of killing machine that is Hawthorn. They just find a way to win every week, whether it's by being a better footy side or sometimes they get a bit of a hand from the umps. But I just can't go past them in Melbourne. Adelaide, they look sensational, and they have a forward line that you feel would you give that forward line a chance against anyone at any time. But Hawthorn at the MCG on a Friday night on a big stage, just a bridge too far, I think.
It's set for him, isn't it? I will say though, I have gone out on a bit of a limb and tipped Adelaide tonight, but it's probably my least confident tip for the round because that Hawthorn side is... I hate it. They did it to my doggies team. They got up over the line somehow, and you can never rule them out either.
Well, yeah, I don't want them to win. Same reasons. Collingwood has that proud record of 4 premierships in a row, and they successfully stopped Melbourne from doing it in the 50s. It would have ended up Melbourne winning 6 in a row in the 50s. So it's pretty much the old Scottish attitude towards England for me this year. It's anyone but Hawthorn.
Yeah, I'm a Geelong fan. I'm not over 2008, and I'll never be over 2008.
It must be tough to get into a grand final, Rudy. On Saturday, it's another massive clash up at the SCG. It's Sydney versus West Coast, and interestingly, I think it's the first time since 2010 that West Coast have played at the SCG. Do you think that'll have any effect for the Eagles?
It's massive for the Eagles, simply for Sydney's the smallest ground in the league by far. It's like an under-12s ground. There seems to just be millions of people around the ball, and it's just a scrap compared to Subiaco, where it's the biggest, longest ground in the league, and the Dockers and the Eagles, they just run and create play, and it's really, when they're playing well, it flows. It's if the Eagles haven't played there for 6 years, that is pretty important.
Is there a chance the smaller ground almost suits West Coast's like constricting style?
Yes, I agree completely. They seem to sort of get found out on grounds like the MCG, big wide open spaces,
a bit wider ones, yeah.
But part of why they're so effective back home is it's a very narrow ground. It's long, which does suit them to a degree, but its narrowness means that the Eagles' web is so effective. There's less room to cover. They can zone out and they can use that team defense to its full effect.
I'm finding this one really hard to tip, to be honest. The SCG factor probably tips it slightly in Sydney's favour, but West Coast are very good, and you feel they've got the exact tools to really take on Sydney's weaknesses. Like Sydney are really, really iffy in the key posts at the back, I feel, and then you've got Josh Kennedy and Jack Darling.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I was about to say that, Josh Kennedy's he's been a bit down in the last couple of weeks. His kicking for goal hasn't been great. And I think he's probably due for a bit of a breakout game this season. And against a fairly, I suppose, undersized Sydney defence, if that slingshot can come into effect, then Josh Kennedy could really take a hold of this game.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, just looking at the teams here, I think Sydney's small forwards are a lot better than West Coast. You've got Heaney, you've got Hanbury lined up on the forward flanks. I just think they're a little bit stronger than Lacroix, Josh Hill, Chris Maston. So small ground, SCG against West Coast. I think Sydney are pretty safe there.
In the wonderful Sunday night slot at the MCG also, it's Melbourne versus Richmond, and it might not be the prettiest encounter, but I think it could be possibly the most interesting one this weekend. Do you think Melbourne are a real chance to get up? Because I know I do.
Anyone can win at any stage against Richmond, which Richmond will rock up. So Melbourne, they were very good last week against Collingwood. They just smashed them around the packs, and so it just matters whatever Richmond turns up. You don't know as much, but betting on this game, I don't know. What do you reckon, Rudy?
I think, bizarrely, the only thing working against Melbourne is the fact that they're probably going to be favourites. To be honest, they really struggle with that tag. It's been a while since they've won 2 in a row as well, maybe 5 or 6 years, maybe more. But I feel at the moment they're a much better footy side than Richmond. The Tigers look completely bereft of leadership and direction out there. They look like they're trying out a new game plan or something. Melbourne, you know what you're going to get from Melbourne. They're honest and they have a crack. And I'm not worried about tipping Melbourne this week. I'm 100% on them.
Brett Deledio is meant to be coming back in, so is Ivan Maric. Do you think they're two pretty big inclusions, obviously, but do you think they're game-winning inclusions for Richmond?
Deledio more so than Maric. I reckon Deledio's got a bit more of a natural fitness base. And he's named at the back pocket. He's not going to be in the back pocket for very long. He's going to be up forward. He's going to be on the ball. He's going to be, he's just going to be running through inside 50s is his strong point. So I reckon he's a class player. I reckon he'll be fine when he gets back. So no problems with Deledio there.
I think Maric makes a pretty big difference, and it's Ivan Maric. We're culturally sensitive here at Upstart. Let's remember that. He makes a huge difference to their structure and their just ability to get the first hands on the ball. But as Kyle said, Deledio is the big in. Not only is he just probably their best player, except for maybe Trent Koch, and the fact is that he brings a lot of belief to a team that is sort of struggles with the mental side of the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. Moving on to the biggest clash in terms of importance, it's the Anzac Day clash on Monday between Collingwood and Essendon. They're two very interestingly poised teams so far. They're 15th and 16th on the ladder. But as Kyle and I discussed earlier, there could be more at stake for Nathan Buckley. What do we think of Essendon's chances on the weekend, Rudy?
Oh, this one is so hard.
Yeah.
It's really weird that it's become relevant. I really can't.
It's always relevant, mate. It's Anzac Day.
Classic
It's the two
Collingwood
biggest
supporters.
clubs.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we're
in the
talking,
land.
you know, in the. Anyway, we won't get into that. Essendon, I think, are a chance to win, but I can't bring myself to tip them any week of the season, to be honest, because they're just so.
It's a scary prospect, just trying to make yourself click over to them.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
The way Collingwood have been playing lately, nothing would surprise me on the weekend.
Form-wise, the Pies would have to be just about the worst in it at the moment, but I still feel like they'll just do enough to get past Essendon.
We've got
surely.
Mason Cox from the USA has making his debut this week at full forward on James Gwilt. I reckon James Gwilt's given away about easily 20 centimetres.
At least.
So
I reckon it could be about 25.
So the Pies, just knocking the ball in the air into their forward 50 like they've been doing the past couple of weeks and getting spoiled. It might work with a 7-foot monster in the goal square. So I back him to make a bit of an impact. So we'll see on Monday, won't we?
I think it's a pretty exciting one. Personally, I was hoping Mason Cox would come in earlier. It's such a great story. Less than 2 years ago, he hadn't even heard of AFL. Here he is on one of the biggest stage in regular season AFL. He's making his debut at the MCG, packed house on Anzac Day. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it is. He's I watched him against Port Melbourne in the VFL. They're just sitting on his head. He's just plucking them out of the air. But as most big lads, it's a long way from hand to foot dropping the ball. So as soon as he gets that down pat, he's looking to be very good. But at the same time, he's still no better or worse than Trav Cloak. So Trav Cloak's been probably playing his whole life.
And Jesse White, of course, the late inclusion last week.
Yeah, and Jesse White, he's gone. So
Are we skipping over the Gold Coast North Melbourne game?
I don't want to talk about North Melbourne ever.
I'm tipping Gold Coast.
Yeah,
big time.
Metricon has not been a happy hunting ground for North Melbourne in recent times.
I just reckon North will have gone into this game drinking their own bathwater a little bit and yet get shown up. It would be vintage North Melbourne. Vintage.
All right, we're coming up to 1:15 and that's all the time we've got for the extended sports report today. Kyle, Rudy, thanks for joining me. Rudy, it's nice to have a different voice in with me.
Oh, it was my pleasure, mate.
no worries, Toby. Have a good weekend, pal.
Thanks for listening.